If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. This is Think Generational Wealth Podcast with your host, Amir Estimo. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast. You can always get money back. You can always get cars, clothes, material things back, but you can never get time back. So I do appreciate you taking the time where you could be listening to any other podcast, but you're listening to this one. Hopefully, I be of value to you today, inspire you, and to go and take action into looking into building, or taking action into building generational wealth. So for today's podcast episode, I wanted to talk about burning desire. And my take on burning desire, and just reading, if you ever read the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, then he has a chapter in there where he's talking about desire. But he personalized this chapter because if any of you know, which I read Think and Grow Rich, but kind of forgot. So this was great refresher to read this topic. And he personalized this chapter desire. And he personalized it because Napoleon Hill's son was born without ears, was deaf. But the elder Napoleon, he made it a burning desire of his for his son to hear. Now, if you ever read the book, you know the story. If not, I suggest you go read the book. It's in Think and Grow Rich. This is a chapter called Desire. And the reason that came about, because I've been focusing a lot on personal development and how to rid myself of bad habits that may stop me from reaching my potential. And you as a human being, you're inside your body. You know what bad habits you have. Everybody do. And I think with all this coronavirus talk lately, all this is going on, the COVID-19, whatever. I mean, if you really look at social media, there's so much noise out there. So you have to be able to just distance yourself from the world and really look at where you at. I mean, if you look at an Instagram and Facebook, you see a lot of people posting stuff that may not be totally authentic. But I think for me is I've struggled with analysis paralysis lately, and I'm just finding a way and now to just really take more action. In the book, Atomic Habits by James Clear, he has a chapter on there where he talks about the 2 minutes. You just do a habit for 2 minutes, and by you doing these little things, it basically you're sowing the seed and you're reaping the harvest later. Because eventually you're going to want to do more. Where James Clear was even he gave a story about how a gentleman wanted to lose weight. He ended up losing, I think it was like 140 pounds. And what he would do was go to the gym for 2 minutes and then leave. Work out for 2 minutes and then leave. So I'll give you my feedback on that. But I want to be able to practice these habits because ultimately my burning desire and your burning desire is for you to figure that out. Napoleon Hill's burning desire was for his son to hear. I mean, when you heard the process of it, how Napoleon was feeding his son, they were playing music for him. And eventually, I think his brother owned a newspaper route. The son would go out, deliver newspaper, even though he couldn't really talk, but he learned how to just be able to get over his limitation, but which to some of us would have been a limitation. But in the book, Napoleon had a quote. He says, "Our only limitations are those we set up in our own minds." And I've been realizing about this analysis paralysis. I'm like, I'm the one who's doing this to myself. It's not real. Fear is not real. And I'm still going through, I'm not afraid to admit, I'm still going through the mindset of going, if you ever read Robert Kiyosaki's book, Cash Flow Quadrant, and me currently, I'm in the E quadrant. If you read that book, you know what I'm talking about when it comes to quadrants. And I really realized it takes a mind shift going from the E quadrant and getting all the way to that B quadrant. Because sometimes you find yourself thinking like an employee. Because there is no job security out there. I mean, even in the US currently right now, we had the latest statistic, I think it was 6 million people was applying they were out of work. I mean, you hear some of these stories about how some of these companies for the SBA loans, the PPP program, some of these small businesses, the money ran out. And there's a lot of fear, a lot of noise out there. But I really realized I have to keep that burning desire. And when it comes to building generational wealth, learning how to become financially educated, because even if you were to pass away, the one thing you could leave is mindset. Because you just need to be able to plant the seed. And I think where we at for now with all this coronavirus talk, I think for me is to stay focused on what is to still have that burning desire. Because generational wealth is something I think you have to desire. Because to everybody it means something different, right? But I think for you is to find ways to be a better person, to be a better service to the marketplace. And I talked about this my previous podcasts in the past. I've talked about where I left a job that I was doing retail. I was working for 10 years and then went to IT. But I realized that is still not my calling. And I think right now, just working on this personal development and now it's just really focusing on taking more action, implementing, building skill sets. Because I think you got to be able to have what separates the greats. I don't know if any of you have seen The Last Dance by the documentary of the 1997-98 Chicago Bulls. I mean, even just me growing up, I didn't get a chance to watch Jordan's career because I was an 80s baby, but I'm probably dating myself. But Jordan, I probably started watching Jordan more so after his when they three-peated against the Suns. That's when I started watching the Chicago Bulls play. Became a big Michael Jordan fan. But it was crazy in 1986 how the team wanted to, because Jordan missed the season because he broke his foot. Well, he didn't miss the season, but he was supposed to be out for the rest of the season. But he came back towards the end of the season, was playing 14 minutes, and he wanted to win. That guy, just watching that part of the documentary that just reemphasizes Michael Jordan's greatness and what separates the greats, because they have the burning desire. I watched Kobe Bryant play, and even watching his old highlights, rest in peace, but Kobe had that same burning desire. And I think these days, we as humans, we lack that. We lack that burning desire. What my passion is now, I've talked about this on this podcast, and I'm putting it out there because I want to be able to I want you guys to be able to hold me accountable too. So, what is your burning desire? What is it that you're willing to give up? Or what is it that burning desire that you have when it comes to accomplishing, whether it's your goals or what you set forth for yourself? Was it changing? What is it? What's that burning desire? So mine is leaving a legacy for the next generation. What's yours? And I'm going to get back to you guys on this 2-minute habit. I'll probably do a podcast on it. But yes, thank you for listening to this podcast, and hopefully you could take the time to figure out what's your burning desire. So until then, what should everybody be thinking? Generational wealth.